So, Hanabeth, out of the research we've been conducting, what are the key things which appear to show are relevant when talking to farmers about engaging with farmers?
So with the Soil CRC survey research, we've surveyed farmers through mail-out surveys across 6 different farming regions in Australia. So that includes Tasmania, Central West New South Wales, 2 regions in Victoria, also the Northern Wheatbelt, and as you know, the Eyre Peninsula. And there's some commonalities. There's some things that are similar across all regions. Like, for example, the value of farmers to be able to pass a healthier environment on to future generations, that comes up as most important value across regions.
Okay, so when we're talking about differences, are these differences going to affect learning styles or how you approach farmers?
Oh, absolutely. So I would say that one of the most important learnings out of this survey is that every region is different. So we can come here and tell you the perfect way to engage with a farmer, but another farmer might actually have a very different set of needs and demographics and attitudes that might affect how they learn in different ways and what they're ready to perceive.
Okay, so how does the demographics specifically differ across the regions, and can you draw any conclusions from those different demographics about changes or acceptance, for example, acceptance of regenerative agriculture?
Regenerative agriculture as well? Yes, I think. So, for example, when we first ran a survey in north central Victoria, we found that farmers were, on the whole, quite a bit older. And to the extent that when we thought, let's divide up our results by generational, these generational boundaries. I'm Gen X, like 1980 to think back to 56 is Generation X.
I won't tell you what generation I am.
You don't have to. You don't have to divulge your age here, David. And we weren't able to include a Generation Y, that's younger than me, 1980 and younger, for the north central Victoria. But when we went to the Eyre Peninsula, we found that we could include a Generation Y, and we included quite a bit of Generation Z as well, where there was actually the whole population skewed to younger farmers, which was I think affirming for the AREP local farming system group.
Yes.
Because they said at the workshop when we developed this survey, they said, look, we really want to find out about how we can better support younger farmers. We think there's more younger farmers out there. We want to support them. And we found from the survey that, yes, those younger farmers felt less supported. So as a result of that finding about the demographic of that area, the age, they then implemented a whole set of programs to better engage younger farmers. Another research project popped up run by Amanda Scott, looking at the networks, knowledge networks of young farmers. And so in that way, all these different strategies for engaging them have been developed, and actually through the knowledge sharing project as well. So you get you get that kind of demographic information, stuff you can't change, of course, but it can be really helpful in how you engage with people. And for example, in other areas, there are a much larger proportion of women who are managing farms, whereas in some areas, that say in, I think, the Northern Wheatbelt, it was about 5%, where it's more like 20% in other regions in Tasmania. So those are the kind of demographic differences that can be really important for helping to know how to engage.
Okay, so how does that affect farmer attitudes to new issues, and are there messages to be learnt about how we can improve and facilitate engagement through perhaps being aware of some of the attitudes coming out of those different demographics?
But farmer attitudes are really important as well. So different regions we ask a question about whether people consider themselves to be an early adopter, or if they say, well, look, this may not be the best farm around, but there's no need to change. Right. And just asking those questions, getting them to self-identify how they see themselves is really helpful. And when you've got that information, people who consider themselves to be early adopters are more likely to embrace risks, they're more open to new knowledge. Often they are indeed much more statistically likely to be implementing a whole set of best practices. Whereas those who say, look, this may not be the best farm around, there's no need to change, the results negatively correlate with best practices. They're much less likely to be doing that. And those farmers are often older farmers who are more risk averse, and they want to see local success before trying something new. Whereas the early adopters are happy to link into other knowledge networks. They'll be using podcasts, they'll be using social media, they'll be using Twitter accounts from the States to get their information. So those kind of attributes can be really, really important. And also, yes, their aversion to risk, but also who they're making decisions with has come up as really important.
Yeah.
So those social elements of farming as well.
Okay, so does that also relate to information sources or perhaps having a local agronomist as a consultant?
So it comes down to people will only listen to trusted sources. So change moves at the speed of trust. So people will open their ears once they feel that you have a relationship and you're someone that can be trusted as a source. And in that way, regional NRM organisations, catchment management authorities, grower groups build this legitimacy as a trusted source of information. So that's really important. But also it's around what other networks people link in with. And so some people might be using international networks online people that they've heard on a podcast that they've developed trust for, and they actually listen to what they're doing and they're keeping up with that group of farmers. So trust is really important. So another really important thing that's been come up in the surveys is farmer goals, but also external pressures to change. I think you probably come up with one or more good example of that and how farmers respond and adapt.
Yeah, well, one of the issues, of course, is the pressure to change comes from various sources, but also it can be immediate pressure or long-term pressure. And I think this comes back to individual characteristics is, for an older farmer, for example, does climate change appear to be a pressing issue? But also, issues like, say, a ban on live sheep exports or live cattle export. How is that going to affect the farming system? And are farmers preparing for these things? I'm not sure that there's going to be any clear response. It does vary dramatically.
Well, it varies based on where your farmers are, right? So to the north of Australia, say in the northern wheat belt, they're more likely to be really drawing on those live export markets. And because there's very few slaughterhouses in that part of the country, so live export is a bigger part of that industry. So they're going to be more heavily affected, whereas on the Eyre Peninsula, it's more local, it's for different purposes. So it's less likely, or the meat is likely to be processed and then sent. So there's going to be different responses by region as well.
Yeah, and certainly the individual will respond differently. So some people respond to a threat by taking it on and trying to, get around it and try and find ways to change. Others will do the reverse, actually try to ignore it or say, well, no, it's going to go away or something like that. So I think the immediacy is a very key thing, because farmers do have this sort of day-to-day thing as well. What do I need to do tomorrow? What's the weather telling me I have to do? What's the crop telling me I have to do tomorrow? But you do get some farmers really just get caught on a day-to-day, oh, I've got to do this. No, I haven't got time to do anything else. This has to be done. And so, those longer-term thinking and perhaps experimentation is hard to fit in.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that was another attribute that came up as really important for farmers in being able to consider trying new practices is time. And actually, the Eyre Peninsula farmers said they had a bit more time than other regions, actually. It was only 17% of them said that they didn't have time. I know they get that lovely summer break.
Yeah, they get a bit of a summer break.
But it does seem, it's a major factor, and finances as well for half of farmers. Finances are a barrier to being able to try new things. And again, it's a little bit chicken and egg, potentially, but we've also got the context of the external economic factors and rising interest rates, and also rising fuel prices and energy prices. So there's a whole range of factors that are going to come together to create this complex environment. The farmers have got to make decisions about what they're going to prioritise, what their goals are for this season, next season, and into the future. So it's, it is complex, and there's a lot of things that farmers have to bring together every day and every season in terms of that short-term and long-term planning.
Yes.